Think about it. Every hiring decision is a choice that can make or break a team, a culture, and even an entire company. So how do we make the right choice? Hi, I'm Dr. Mickey, and welcome to Inside the Mind of Hiring. Here we'll uncover the psychology and strategy behind effective hiring. Because the right fit isn't just about skill or experience. It's about understanding people, their motivations, their strengths, and the shadows of their shortcomings. Together, we'll tackle the tough questions. How do we look beyond bias? How do we find the qualities that make people not just qualified hires, but the right hires? This is about identifying leaders who drive success, lift morale, and actualize a company's vision. Inside the Mind of Hiring starts now.
I'm Dr. Pat, everybody, and I want to thank you for joining us here today because we are taking on a headline topic. It is a headline topic because you're me and you're in this world. And the good news for somebody like me is sitting on a plane, Jessica and I came up with one of the first AI apps in 2019. And we are developing it. And you all are going to be able to buy the game, join us in crowdfunding for AI for the Soul. But back then, what happened? COVID. AI wasn't even born yet. But here's where we are today. Y'all ready? The AI executive profile. Yes. AI. Why? Because it is very difficult in the world we're living today. And no, I'm not talking about one of the top digital companies that you have to sign on for. Out of everybody's mouth these days is AI. I don't think people are even writing anything anymore. But Dr. Mickey is joining us here today to take this on. Why? Because he is the executive consultant that has to help these decisions be made. Dr. Mickey, AI executive. Am I an AI executive?
Are you?
No, I'm not.
Well, I have a confession to make.
Oh, no.
I have a confession to make. I've assessed plenty of people that are responsible for IT operations in an organization, the CIO, the CTO, the chief financial officer, who sometimes manages the IT functions. I've never specifically yet assessed an AI operational executive yet. So I've been thinking a lot about this.
It's good. It's good you do because, I think this is happening for smaller companies. And look, let me be clear when I say small. I'm not talking like teeny weeny. I'm talking about not the mega corporations, not the IBMs, not the big ones out there, right?
Right.
I'm talking about the bump you down a few. They're still gigantic revenue. But these are the companies that I find are jumping on the AI bandwagon. And by the way, if they don't, their people are. Do you know what it's like? Okay. Do you know what it's like to be in a company where your team is using AI and you're the, let's call them an executive, and
Right.
you don't have a clue what they're doing with AI? I mean, do you think that works in the world today?
Well, it could. It's good. You know what
That's
it's
why I
called?
ask you the question, because
It's called Skunk Works, and you get a lot of innovation that way. Skunk Works.
I had a chat with one of my executive friends here. I mean, everybody in Seattle is an executive, just in case you want to know. And I was just joking because it's April 1st, April Fool's Day. And I was like, hey, I got a few job titles for you. I mean, I know you've been looking for new titles for the executives and you want them to be really effective.
Right.
And he says, oh my gosh, really? He said, yeah, I came up with some great titles. I know you just went through them, Dr. Mickey. CFO, CIO, CMP, C something, executive.
Right.
I said, I
Right.
got a few for you. You ready? I said, the new one that's being used in the world now, there are four.
Right.
One is called a COC DOG. The other one's called a CCAT. And the third one is called a CCOW. And I said, aren't they exciting titles? He said, yeah. Wow. They sound familiar to me. Okay. So you understand I did dog, cat, and cow.
Right.
I was
Right.
like,
I
he's
did.
like,
I heard that.
what does CDOG mean? And I said, well, just wait a minute. Well, what do you think about it? Which one would you pick? What, are you interested in these? He said, yeah, I'm interested in that last one, that CC. I like that CC.
Right.
OW.
Right.
I said, so you want to hire a dog, a cat, and a
And the
cow. And
cow.
so welcome to the group. All of us have done
Right.
it.
Yeah. I was thinking top dog.
Well,
Right.
April 1st. So, but
Right.
this is not going away. AI
Oh
is not going
no.
away. So
No,
how would you
no.
go about ensuring the right executive selection here?
Well, I was thinking about, we were talking about manufacturing, and that's a tremendous environment to apply
Yeah.
AI technology. And, uh, so let's say it's a couple $100 million in revenue manufacturing organization. You're a VPHR and you've been chartered with, uh, uh, it's a manufacturing organization that's really committed to the benefits of AI in terms of quality, productivity, customer and revenue, customer and revenue growth. And they really want to get bullish about this. I mean, they asked the AI, I'm sorry, the VPHR
See, you're already doing
to
it.
to put together, to organize and execute a search for a VP operations that would be responsible for AI applications to their environment. Okay, um, so what the person would be responsible for would be identifying AI priorities um, and the cost benefits of developing them, get approval from the CEO and the board on those investments, um, manage or lead the development of those projects or the program in a cost-effective and efficient manner, and lead the application of the program. So that's would be the requirements.
Wow.
So what how should the VP HRs, get started with something like this?
Good
And
question.
yeah, and I was thinking about the hiring teams that we discussed last week or the week before that, that are responsible for interviewing candidates and discussing them as a collaborative group and making the best possible selections. And but this group would be important in terms of establishing job specifications. And what I mean by that are the job expectations or requirements, the experience and competencies that would relate to success in a role like that, and the personal characteristics that would be important to lead that candidate to success in that kind of role. And and that would be important because it would inform the hiring team because they're interviewing the candidates. It would inform the search consultant or the recruiting principal about what's critical. So they would source the right candidates. And it would inform some guy like me, the business psychologist, that would probably assess a candidate of that, of that stature for sure. So, job expectations are just for an example, just as an example, to what extent is it specialized AI applications, or is it generative AI applications, or a good combination of both? Um, Specialized AI applications relate to things like defect detection. Generative IA is a little more sexy. It relates to new content or behavior that relates to an existing data set. And so a good example, it produces new stuff like text, video, images, and robotic behavior. Robots finding solutions, not just executing specific tasks, but actually thinking about solutions and executing them.
Yeah.
So it's pretty fancy stuff. And so, um, so what would be required there? That's important to
Well, what are
specify.
you looking for, though? I mean, what type of person is this? Because this is like, so what ha you want to hear my AI joke? Um, what do you think happens when you put two psychologists together on a show to talk about AI and assessments for executives? Well, one of them says to the other, Dr. Mickey, why don't we develop a scale and a measure for this? Because guess
Right.
what? Nobody's doing it. And for the
Right.
following reasons, what were the characteristics you would look for, and would we find them in the current assessment tools we have?
We would, if I'm looking for, let's say this is I thought you might go right to that. Uh,
Oh
uh,
no, you know me too well. I know,
right,
I'm
right.
scared.
I had a feeling that I should just forget about all the stuff that I just committed to memory. But
No, I have it all. It's all here because, I'm looking at this and I'm thinking about what are the personalities? I
right,
mean, who
right.
does that person have to be?
Okay,
And
so well, I
then
think it's a
because
good
you're going to
question.
have to be, yeah, you're going to be the
Right,
guy that has to say, oh, this person doesn't have this fit for the job, right?
right,
That's you.
right, exactly. And I have to say that. I have to make that recommendation. So if I were, establishing a profile for an AI exec, like a vice president of operations that would be responsible for the development and execution of AI programs. Um, I would treat that person as probably a CEO successor. It would have to be somebody with those skill sets and potentials, actually, because I thought about it long and hard. I read a lot about different AI applications, and it's not just that, it's there's a broader focus. But one of the things that I would be looking at is intellectually, I'd be looking at a real balance of superior skill in tactical, strategic, and mathematical thinking. I'd be looking for superior capability, not strengths or weaknesses or glitches in that profile. I want across the board excellence in those thinking categories. Okay. Um, and I'd be looking for somebody with moderately or highly imaginative orientation, good, strong intellectual curiosity, like most CEOs have. Okay. Um, and I would be looking at, but somebody that's imaginative, but with a little practical grounding. You can't be too off in outer space with that imagination. I'd be looking for somebody that's comfortable with change, workload diversity, uh, definitely multitasking, um, comfort with ambiguity and loosely defined situations, but enabling those situations in their own mind to take shape. I'd be looking for a sense of results, not just process results. I'd be looking for somebody that gets priorities and sustains their focus on priorities and the bigger picture, and but with good attention to only the relevant detail. In other words, really good planning and organizational capacity. That's important. Um, and I'd be looking for someone with a consultative, collaborative, delegatory leadership style. Um, but it's someone that'll make timely decisions. Consult with a group of subject matter experts, but still be able to know when to make a timely decision and when to hold people accountable. Someone that can truly maximize the power and ingenuity of teams. Critical in this
Yeah.
for something like this. And guess what? I would like to identify a nice person because change requires a nice person. And what I mean, I can be more specific about that. Someone with just people smart person that gets people and really has positive social skills. Someone that's has a reasonable degree of humility, treats mistakes as learning opportunities, and improvement opportunities, and just makes people feel good about who they are and what they do.
Hmm.
Because when you're dealing with that kind of change that's going on, you want people pulling into the parking lot with enthusiasm, anticipation, excitement. Uh, you don't want them to be scared. You don't want to be
No.
grip. You want them to be the grip in their steering wheel too hard
Yeah.
when they're coming to work. So, I think that's a profile that I would feel pretty comfortable
Yeah.
with for a VP operations in a manufacturing environment that's
Yeah.
responsible for AI applications.
I worked at a manufacturing operation, one of the largest in the world, actually, of its time, Western Electric.
Right.
And back in the day, somebody had to build those dang phones, right? And I worked
Right.
for the Bell Labs and Bell Core research part of it. And I remember an argument, and I worked for the president directly and the executive vice president. So I got to sit on what they talked about. And by the way, I didn't sign an NDA. So what I loved hearing about was the arguments between the VP of software,
Right.
brilliant man.
Right.
If it wasn't for him, we would not be on the cell phone now. But the
Right.
bottom line was this. The biggest conversation they ever had, and they talked about AI, but they didn't call it AI. And the biggest conversation was, we need somebody at the top that understands unions, that understands the implication before they bring in a plan, that knows how
Right.
to strategically plan something. But boy, it's like you said, they better show up happy, snappy, compassionate, and empathetic,
Right.
or you go nowhere in a manufacturing firm. And you know this, grocery people, checkers at stores are being replaced.
Exactly. I was the biggest fear people have, not only the style of their leader, but are they being earmarked to be innovated out of the company?
Mm-hmm.
So that whole process with people is going to have to be foreseen and managed properly. And people are going to be, go in with a fair amount of fear.
Yeah.
And the leader in an organization like that that's responsible for AI applications really has to understand and relate
Yeah.
to that. It's pretty
I,
critical.
I want to ask you about this one thing that we haven't talked about. I find now that you have to have people. This is my conversation with my D dog friend. He's still my friend. And the conversation is now, not only do you have to have these skills, but he said, you need to hire executives that know how to hire other people.
Oh, for
And I
sure.
didn't have time to talk to him, but
Yeah,
I know what he was saying. Basically, he's saying there's a change coming. You might as well be playing Bob Dylan song right now,
right.
because he says there's a change coming. And if you think you can implement something like AI with the current team you have, you better think again. They either have to be right up there with you, because isn't that the major conflict in any organization when you bring in somebody like that at the top
Right.
and the people around that person are like, what? I mean, come on,
Yeah.
right? Isn't this a tough role?
Yeah, they have to have good instincts for people, both intellectually and in terms of the way they feel about people, to bring in the right people. There's no question about that. It's a key aspect of their role. And sometimes I almost play that down. I almost forget about that when I'm assessing people. But there has to be a certain amount, or I would say a relatively high degree of insight into people. Um, because picking the right people is a combination of intellect and intuition, and they've got to have a fair amount of both to be able to
Mm.
hire the right folks for the jobs, let's say, directly reporting to them, for sure.
What kind of person do they need to be when it comes? This is going to happen. I don't care who y'all listening to. If you don't understand that mistakes are going to happen in this transformation, it's not a transition, it is a transformation. It is a major overhaul.
Right,
Think this steam engine industry, right?
right,
Think what we're talking about. This is what we're talking about here. If you're not going to convert to an AI platform of some kind, you're not going to keep up. But tell me a little bit about who that person should be. How should they treat mistakes?
well, I think the VP that we're talking about should be able to hire managers and professionals that have an attitude that mistakes are, really opportunities to learn, grow, and excel. Really do things better. That you got to assume that people have the right mindset and they want to do a good job and they want to apply their thinking in the right way. And mistakes are success. You know the adage: successful people fail more than unsuccessful people. So
But I have personal experience with that.
yeah. So I mean, I really believe that's true. That individuals and teams have to go through sometimes trials and tribulations to get to the right answers. And you can't get all upset and messed up about mistakes because that's part of what it takes
Hmm.
to incorporate and develop this stuff. Fortunately, there are firms out there that are really bullish on developing the capacity um, to enable organizations to apply these AI techniques or methodology to their specific, environments. So that is out there, but there are times where teams internally are going to have to develop stuff from scratch
Yeah.
using it. So either way, there's going to be mishaps, there's going to be mistakes,
Hmm.
there's going to be missteps, and you got to be patient for that and
Hmm.
learn how to ask the right questions so people really do learn from it. But you can't be slamming
Yeah.
people for that. For that,
You know,
it's
what you're
yeah,
talking about is so key. When I was in my upward mobility, in order for me to get a director job, I had to take a line job. Honestly, I would have taken any line job, but I didn't see this one coming. It was a line job in graphics. It was corporate graphics inside and out. They were 2 million in the hole. At that time, that was a lot of money. And I worked for Mary Louise Smith, and the AVP said to us, you need to fire everybody, shut it down, and outsources. And I looked at Mary Louise. She looked at me and she said, honey, we ain't going to do that.
right,
So what did she do? Here's what it reminds me of.
right,
She took a manual graphics presentation, old school, and she says, we're going to automate it. Do you know what it's like to automate graphic artists, really talented people? That was my line job.
right, right,
And boy, did I learn a lot about it. But what
right.
I learned most is that you have to present the benefit to people. You have to present, why is this going to help you? And no jobs are going to away.
Yeah, sure. Well,
But
that's
this
important.
VP has
Yeah,
got to have that kind of communication skill,
yeah,
right?
no, yeah, no, no question. They really do. They really do. And it's important to allay people's fears. You're um, people that are going to make it are going to be willing to develop new competencies. They
Yeah.
are, but they're going to need support in doing
Yeah.
that. They got to let go of what they've been used to doing and developing new competencies in a manufacturing environment. Machines used to set up themselves. People now, the real great machine operators are really adept at using computer programming and their own skills to set up and operate machines. It's gotten to be more complex. So people had to get really good at that. Right, rather than having, always maybe an expert doing that for them, they had to do it for themselves. So it increased the productivity of the workforce to have them do that. So this is another level of
Mhm.
sophistication in that
Mhm.
regard. So
You know, it's interesting we're talking about this because also you got to be able to get your hands dirty. And you know what I mean? Is that an old expression? Sorry.
it's
But for me, what it meant is there
yeah,
was no way I was going to convince Nina, who on my first day pulled out a sketch pad and started to draw a bull. And I could tell you what the bull was doing in that picture and made it
right,
very clear she wanted me to see her draw that.
right,
And I knew right away I was going to have to learn how to become a graphic artist.
right,
And I became, to this day, I'm a really good digital graphic artist, website
yeah,
designer, digital video
really.
creator.
Hmm.
Why? not because I had to learn what I was making her to learn. It was never going to change. Never going to
Right.
change.
Right.
And what happened with that, Mickey, though, is I could have just dug my heels in.
Yeah.
I was never going to do, I would not be the person that I am running the company I am if I did
Right.
that, would
Right.
I?
Well, no, you were probably willing to learn. Your curiosity outweighed your fear. So you were willing to learn. You wanted to learn.
I was afraid of Nina.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, sometimes you can learn because if you don't learn, this person's going to kill me. That could be your motivation. But
Oh my gosh.
you were willing to learn and take
Yeah.
your lumps learning, and
Uh,
that's
that's the
often
job.
that's an important
Yeah.
adaptation aspect
Yeah.
of any change that's going to be enveloping us, like
Yeah.
AI.
Well,
You
look,
know.
this is part one of this. How do we find out more about you, Dr. Mickey? Thank you for taking on this topic. This is part one. We're going to do another part two. Thank you. How
Okay.
do we find out more about you?
Well, you can check out my website, which is deltaconsultants.com. You can check me out on LinkedIn, Dr.
Good.
Mickey Fineberg, Fineberg, or you can email me, Mickey, Mickey, at deltaconsultants.com.
All right, everybody. I want you to email Dr. Mickey and I want you to tell him to design an assessment form specifically around AI. Dr. Mickey, thank you so much. Thank
Yeah,
you
you
all for
got it.
tuning us in, turning us on. I think us two psychologists need to put a little project together. Thank
Okay.
you all for tuning us in, turning us on. We'll see you next time.
You have been listening to Inside the Mind of Hiring with me, Dr. Mickey Feinberg. Tune in the first and third Tuesday at 11 on Transformation Talk Radio to discover the psychology of making successful hiring decisions. In each episode, hiring managers and HR pros will learn how to leverage assessments and other key screening sources and avoid common pitfalls. Job seekers will gain insight into successfully presenting themselves. For more information on assessing people for mission-critical jobs and on career assessment and coaching, visit deltaconsultants.com and my LinkedIn profile. If you'd like to write me personally, it's Mickey, Mickey, at deltaconsultants.com.